Welcome to the Reclaimed Heirloom. My name's Christina, and I'd like to show you how I converted this broken down vanity into end tables, and I'm going to walk you through all the supplies and the techniques I'm going to use. We are going to be using chalk paint as well as Saltwash, which is a fantastic textured medium. For the tabletops, I want to demonstrate how you can use dark or black wax to convert your tabletops instead of using a wood stain. This vanity was pretty broken down, so I just took out the middle table and added some wood filler, and with a spatula I just filled in the two sides and any other gouges that I saw that just needed a little bit of a fill. And then I recommend using a sandpaper at say a 120 to 220 grit and give your items a really good clean inside and out. The tops were a solid wood, so I was able to salvage that, but the rest of this is going to need a new facelift. So I'm making my Saltwash mix, which is going to be about a 50-50 to chalk paint with Saltwash. And I'm adding in the French linen, and I'm going to go and add about 2-3 tablespoons of some Enfleur just to enrich it a little bit more. And I'm using about a 50-50, which is about standard with Saltwash. You want about 50% paint, 50% Saltwash. You're going to want to mix your Saltwash really well, get all that powder mixed in with the paint, and it's going to be kind of like a cake batter consistency. Saltwash is pretty amazing. You can actually mix it with any type of paint you want. I'm just going to use an old chippy brush to apply this mix, and there's really no right and wrong. You're just really going to get your paint on there. So I'm just kind of smearing it across, and then I'm going to go ahead and create high and low points with all of this texture. And it's pretty easy. I'm just literally stabbing it as well as stippling, and what you can see is it's really creating this amazing texture. You certainly don't need a lot of force with this. You're just literally tapping, and you can see that it's making the high and low points. You can take your paintbrush and just kind of bring down the low points a little bit if you wanted to, but I actually would like to keep it for the design that I would like to achieve. There is no specific brush stroke involved with applying a Saltwash mix. That's what's pretty amazing. And the other factor I found super amazing is I'm using actually a lot less paint. So this is so thick and it's covering up so well. I would normally need approximately 2 coats of any chalk paint to cover up these end tables, but with the Saltwash and the thickness of the Saltwash, I am only going to need 1 layer. You do not need to add any water with this application, and normally with my chalk paint applications, I normally like to use a little bit of water as I'm putting on my base coats just to move the paint around, but again, with Saltwash, you do not need to add any water. If you'd like to have a little bit more consistency and you're feeling it's a little too thick, I recommend just adding paint, not water. Just a little tiny bit of paint and give it a good stir again, and it should help loosen it up if it feels a little too cakey. Again, if you want your texture to come down just a little bit and you're finding the peaks are a little too high, just take your paintbrush and just lightly smooth over a little bit to bring those peaks down. It was unfortunate that the outside condition was pretty rough, but the inside of these end tables were in really good condition. So to complete the project later on, I'm going to go ahead and put in an aged oak gel stain just to freshen up the inside of the drawers. When you're letting your salt wash dry, I recommend that just give the outer corners a wipe and make sure there's nothing collected. And I normally leave my drawers open when they're drying. And here's our first coat, and it's going to be the only coat I need of salt wash. It really, really is, it's amazing. If you need to stop through your project, just grab yourself a Ziploc bag, and yeah, you can carry this on for a few days if you have a bigger piece that you're working on and need some time. Not a problem at all. Once everything is completely dry, I'm going to be using a clear glaze, and I normally use a water base, but since this COVID situation, shopping's been limited, and I've picked up a Benjamin Moore acrylic glaze, a clear, and it's been working just fine. I'm not having any issues with the acrylic. And if you'd like more working time, just grab yourself some extender. For the most part, again, if you're new at chalk painting or with glaze, extender is super helpful. So the colors I'm going to use with the glaze is going to be the Chocolate en Fleur by any Sloan, as well as a Paris Gray, and I think I'm going to even add in some graphite, which is kind of a really dark, almost black chalk paint as well. And I'm going to use an old chippy brush here, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do this. And all I'm going to do is apply clear glaze first. And just so you know, clear glaze is a working medium. Think of it just like adding water. It's allowing you to play with your paints. And it's almost like clear paint. And what it does is it works as a medium that allows for your blending process just to be so much smoother. Literally, I can blend paints in half the time I could with water. When blending with glaze, your tactile touch from the bristle tips to the actual surface is super light. And as you can see, you really don't need very much paint, just a little tiny bit. And I'm literally feathering it. That's how light my touch is. And I'm just going around, moving the paint, kind of just figuring out where I want my highlights and lowlights, but it is so easy, and it literally just takes a few moments, and again, half the time it would when I generally would add water and chalk paint to blend. Number one rule when working with clear glaze is you're going to add it first. And again, if you want a little bit more working time, just add that glaze extender and blend away, have some fun. And I even want to show you how you can correct something if for some reason you've gone ahead and blended and you want to make some changes. You can use any color tones you want, any paint brands that you prefer to use, even with the chalk paints, which I find a water-based paint is great for blending. And again, it's all a very, very light touch, and you're feathering and just kind of gliding it, and the glaze just makes it so much smoother, and you can see the transitions of colors just coming together with very little effort. Love it. Even once everything is completely dry and you still want to correct it, it's no problem at all. Literally what happens once you've applied, as you can see the very top rim of this drawer, I put a little too much graphite, which is the dark chalk paint. So I'm literally putting some more glaze right on top of that, and I'm just going to wipe it back and it's gone. So it almost acts like an eraser, the clear glaze. So this is super helpful, especially when you're trying to figure out how you want to blend it or how many color tones. I mean, really, sky's the limits. As you see, I'm literally using an old chippy brush, and I think it cost me like $1.99 if I was lucky. And you don't need any fancy brushes to do blending with the clear glaze. Whatever brushes you're comfortable to use. And clear glaze is relatively easy to find. Most paint shops carry it, Amazon carries it. Um, I'm a particular fan of the water-based clear glaze from General Finishes. But as I mentioned, the acrylic clear glaze works just fine as well. Anywhere that sells wall paint in your area will more than likely have a glaze, even if it's acrylic. So just wanted to mention that if you're looking for a clear glaze in your area. And again, because we have this really, really thick textured base with that salt wash, I'm finding that the glaze is allowing the chalk paint and the blending to just run really smooth to make the transitions go really, really smooth. And I'm loving the results. So I definitely want to add some more detail to the outside exterior after we're finished. But we're going to go ahead and let this dry, and I will show you exactly what we're going to do next. And I just wanted to give you a quick close-up of all that beautiful texture that the salt wash did, and I absolutely love it. So I wanted to demonstrate to you that you can use a dark wax and or black wax or both for your tabletops. So you can use stain, of course, or a gel stain, but I just wanted to show you that you can use the dark wax for your tabletops, and it actually looks very similar to using a stain. And it's actually more hydrating and better for your wood to use the wax versus the stain. But again, it's all a case of preference and prerogative, so whichever you want. But again, it's just I wanted to demonstrate to you that this is also a great alternative for your tabletops. You do not need to use the clear wax first before doing this application, but depending on the condition of your wood and the richness in color that you want, you could mix clear wax and dark wax if you don't want it as dark as what you see me doing here. So that is also an alternative as well. If you ever wanted to have a beautiful pickled weathered look, the white wax will give you a beautiful finish as well. Once I've gotten enough of my dark wax on, I'm just going to go ahead and brush stroke it all into one direction. And I'm going to go ahead and actually add in a little bit of black wax around the rim of this tabletop. But here's a little contrast of where we started after the salt wash application to where we are now between the two tables, and I'm really loving where this is going. So again, I'm just adding that little bit of dark wax around the edges and corners here. I'm going to go ahead and add white wax to everything that's dried now with the clear glaze and the blended chalk paint, and I'm going to show you why. Because we have that beautiful texture from the salt wash, I love how all those high points pick up the white wax, and it just gives a beautiful smoked effect. I really am enjoying using this white wax. And it actually will seal all of the project as well. So it's not necessarily a must of using the clear wax first when you apply white wax. But if you have applied white wax, you don't like it, you can just grab some clear wax and it will remove all of the white wax. I am absolutely loving the results with the white wax and how it's being picked up with those high points from the salt wash mix. But I definitely think we should be adding a little bit more. I'd like to add more definition and a little bit more contrast. So I think I'm going to go ahead and add in some dark and possibly even some black wax as well. So I'm going to show you exactly what I do. But here's an aerial on what we've got going on, and it's looking really cool. So I'm going to start with the dark wax, and I'm going to use a separate brush. And if it's not quite enough, I will go ahead and use some black wax, but I think I'm just going to start with a little tiny bit of the dark wax and see how I'm liking the low lights with the dark wax. Always remember with dark wax, a little tiny bit, and just you really want to rub it in there and get it into that texture. It's quite easy to work with. It is a wax, so it's quite creamy. And if for any reason you don't like anything you've added, similar to the white wax, just grab some clear wax and it will wipe back and erase it. There are so many fun, super fun things that you can do with salt wash, and it's actually got some pretty neat advantages to it. So I'm definitely going to be showing you guys in the very near future a couple of more tutorials on other effects that you can do with salt wash. But this was a great beginning because it just really shows you the effects of texture, in which we all try to sometimes attempt for even just with a thick chalk paint. And again, you're using so much less paint and you're even getting that much thicker of a texture. So it's a great medium to use. So with a cheap little artist brush, I love to get into the little corners and details with my dark and black wax. You could also use a Q-tip as well if you don't want to, or you don't have a little artist brush. So it's just great for getting into those little details. Now with a clean brush, I'm just going to go around and give everything a really good buff. And again, glaze does not seal your projects. The only alternative you have is using the waxes, and or you can use a lacquer finish. To the right is only white wax, to the left is with the dark and the black wax. And can't wait to finish these off and get them in the sunlight so we can see how beautiful they look. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and if you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment in the comment box below. And most of all, don't forget to subscribe. Looking forward to sharing another decorative finish chalk paint project with you really soon. Thanks so much for watching.